Hello everyone and welcome back to the Solo Gamers Club. Tonight we're going to be continuing with our solo playthrough of War of the Ring using my Alone in Middle-earth rule set. We'll begin the next turn with phase 1, and that's our action dice and events phase. Shadow player is going to recover 4 action dice along with the special dice from Gandalf and from Galadriel. Shadow player is going to recover a total of 8 dice with the appearance of the Witch King along with a faction die. The Free Peoples player draws the event cards Premonition of Danger, Grimborn, the Old, son of Bjorn, and Father of Trees. Now the 2 standard cards will move our hand total to 6, so we're okay with that, but that faction event is going to place us to 5 cards, so we're going to have to discard one of the faction events. And looking at our faction events, I believe we're going to discard the one we just drew, Father of Trees. Shadow player currently has a total of 4 standard events and 3 faction events. So they're going to draw their new cards, and that's going to place them at a total of 6 standard and 4 faction events. They're completely full. We'll move on to phase 2. That's the Fellowship phase. Fellowship progress track is at 3 currently. Fellowship is in Goblin's Pass, Goblin's Gate rather. And unfortunately, the Witch King, chief of the Ring Wraiths, is in their same spot. They're currently hidden. We're going to maintain Gandalf as the guide, and that will entitle him to his Naradai. Phase 3 is our hunt allocation. We'll consult table A and roll 2d6. Here's the roll. Roll is a 6, and the shadow player is going to place 1 faction die in the hunt box. Phase 4 is our action die roll, and here's the roll for the Free Peoples. All right, they have rolled an event die, Will of the West, and 2 character die. Their special die have been rolled, and by the rules we have to use the I result. So that is going to be placed into the hunt pool, and Galadriel's die will not be used during the turn. Shadow player's roll is next. And he rolls, 1 eye from the faction die. We'll add that to the hunt box. And he rolls a total of 2 event dice, 2 character dice, 2 muster, and a muster army. All right. We'll move on to phase 5, and that's the action resolution. Free Peoples have 4 action dice to use. Shadow player has a total of 7. So the Free Peoples are technically capable of passing if they choose. The Free Peoples player are going to use a character die, and they're going to declare a Advance the Fellowship action, and that's going to advance the Fellowship progress marker to 4. But now the Shadow player has his hunt roll. Now he has 3 dice in the box. So that'll allow him to roll 3 dice, but with the Witch King, chief of the Ring Wraiths, in that same space, that will entitle him to 1 reroll. He's considered a Nazgul. Here's the roll. And they rolled a 6, so they have a success, and they're going to take their reroll because it could be an I result, which is going to change. And they did. They have 2 successful dice for the hunt, so we're going to be drawing 1 hunt tile. And the hunt tile is revealed to be, it is an eye, and the Fellowship is revealed. So how the eye works is you count up how many successful dice you had during the hunt roll, and that's the amount of damage that is inflicted. So we have, in this case, it would be considered to be 2 hunt damage, and the fellowship is revealed. So I think in this case we're going to take Gandalf as a casualty, and that will use up a total of 3. He'll absorb 3 of the hunt damage, so there will be no hunt damage, and that will appoint Strider Dunedain as the new guide for the Fellowship. Now the Fellowship now is revealed, so we will move them to the revealed side, and they have 4 points that they can spend on the map to move. So I think what we'll do is we're going to move the Fellowship 1 into the Old Ford, 2 to Gladden Fields, 3 to Dimril Dale, and 4 to Parth Celebrant. I apologize for that. I had a phone call. The other item that we have to address is the Witch King has a special ability, and that's called He Sees, He Knows. If the Fellowship is declared in a region which is not Unconquered Free People Stronghold, you may move the Chief of the Ringwraiths to the region containing the Ringbearers. So that's what we're going to do. The Chief of the Ringwraiths will move to Parth Celebrant, and he's going to continue to plague the Ringbearers. And now it is the Shadow player's turn. We're going to consult Sauron's Gaze table, and there will be a +1 modifier active. It says add 1 if the Fellowship is revealed, and they currently are revealed. So here is the roll for Sauron's Gaze. The roll is a 6. That's modified to a 7, and that's going to be Mordor. And the primary objective was Osgiliath. We've captured that, so then we'll go on to our secondary objective, and that's Minas Tirith. All right. We'll begin by examining the Shadow player's event cards. He has the Palantir of Orthanc, play in the table if Saruman is in play. Okay, that one, he's not in play yet, so we won't be able to use that. Black Captain Commands, play if the Witch King is in play. You may either recruit 2 Nazgul in the region containing the Witch King or move any or all of the Nazgul. Then you may move or attack with an army containing the Witch King. All right, that's possible. We'll keep that off to the side. It doesn't really affect Mordor, though. On and on they went. Special Hunt Tile is now in play. That does not really affect Mordor. And Candles of Corpses. Play if the Fellowship is not in a region containing a Free People settlement. That would be applicable, but not to Mordor. So we'll see about these strategy cards. Hill Trolls. Play if Sauron is at war. Replace 2 Sauron regular units anywhere on the game board with 2 Sauron elite units. That one is quite interesting, and I think we're going to end up playing that. And we're going to play that Hill Trolls card. Play if Sauron is at war. We're going to play an event die, and we'll activate that card. Replace 2 Sauron regular units anywhere on the game board with 2 Sauron elite units. And we'll do that in Osgiliath. And that first army now contains 3 elites and 6 regulars. Okay. Next up is going to be the Free People's player, and they're going to use a character action die to hide the Fellowship. So we're going to indicate that that should have been moved to 0, by the way. We've resolved that, and that'll be back to hidden status for the Fellowship. They're in Parth Celebrant. All right. And next up is the Shadow player. We'll have a roll on Sauron's Gaze table, and the Fellowship is no longer revealed, so there'll be no modifiers to this roll. Roll is a 5, and that's going to be Isengard. All right. And I think the best thing we can do is we're going to play a muster die and use that to bring in a minion. In this case, it's going to be Saruman. So Saruman is going to enter play, and that is going to award the shadow player an extra action die. So we'll take an action die from the supply and add that to the dice pool of the shadow player. In addition, we'll place the Saruman model in Orthanc. Free People's player are up next, and they're going to use an event die to play the card Premonition of Danger. Draw 3 hunt tiles, discard permanently one of them for the remainder of the game, and put the other 2 tiles back into the hunt pool without effect. All right. So we'll draw 3 hunt tiles and remove one of them from the game. Here's the first one. It's an eye with a reveal. Second one is 2 damage. And the third is a 0 and reveal. And I think we will permanently remove the eye with the reveal. That'll be permanently removed from the game, and then we will place these 2 tiles back into the draw bag. Next up is the shadow player, and we'll roll and consult Soren's gaze table. The roll is a 6, and that's going to be Moria and Dal Guldur. All right. And I think we're going to play a muster army die. And that's going to allow us to move a couple of armies. And I think what we're going to do is we're going to move this force in Dal Guldur towards Lorien. We need some reinforcements there. So we'll move all of these into South Anduin Vale. We'll keep one back as a garrison. And then we still have 1 movement left on the map we can make. And I think our next movement, we're going to use the forces in Morannon, and we'll move those to Dagorlad. All right. Free People's player would be up next. They have a Will of the West die, but the shadow player has a total of 4 dice remaining, so we're going to pass and have them take an action next. As the Free Peoples have passed, the shadow player will take the next action. Here's his roll on the gaze table. The roll is a 7, and that's Mordor is the focus, and the secondary objective is Minas Tirith. And I think the shadow player is going to use a character action die, and we're going to move some minions. I'm going to bring back the 2 Nazgul that have been placed in Holland and the Fords of Brunnen, and we'll bring those back to the First Army. And we'll try to get some leadership adjustments before we make our final assault on Minas Tirith. And in addition, I think that's all we'll do for right now. So we'll add both of those Nazgul to the First Army. It's now the Free People's player's turn to perform an action. They have 1 die. It's a Will of the West die, and the shadow player has 3 dice, a muster, character, and event die. And I think we're going to use this Will of the West die as an army die. And we're going to move 2 armies. And the first army that we're going to move is in Leyden, and we're going to move this force into Pelargir. That's going to give us quite a bit of options if that attack comes on Minas Tirith. Now the dark player is going to have to worry about this flanking maneuver that could be happening to him. So we'll see what happens with that. The second army movement is going to be to move the elves that are currently in the Fords of Brunnen, and we're going to move into Holland, and we're going to threaten Moria. That's going to give the shadow player quite a bit to think about. Now it's the shadow player's turn. We'll have a roll on Soren's gaze table. The roll is an 8, and that's going to be Umbar and Harad. Shadow player has checked his available event cards, and nothing really stands out there for play in the Umbar Harad region. So I think what we're going to do is we will play a muster die, and we're going to activate this large force that we have in West Orandor, and they're going to declare an attack on Pelargir. All right, the Shadow player is going to be attacking with 10 units. They have 2 elite and 8 regulars of Southruns. Gondor is going to be defending with 1 elite, 1 leader, and 7 regulars. Now they're in Pelargir, that is a city, and that's going to afford them a defensive benefit during the first round. First step in resolving the combat is to decide if we're going to play a combat card. Free Peoples have declined to play a card. None of the combat cards that they have other than scouts would be of decent benefit. We could play scouts, but the problem with that is once that line is breached at Pelargir, Dal Amroth and Lamden are going to be pretty much open to attack. So we're going to try to make a stand here. And we're going to make a roll and see if the Shadow player will be playing a combat card. He has a total of 5 standard cards, so any roll less than a 5, and the Shadow player will attempt to play a combat card. Here's the roll. Roll's a 3, so he will be playing a combat card. We'll get our cards together, shuffle them, and reveal them one at a time till a viable combat card is found. And the first combat card is one for the Dark Lord. Play if the defending army is in the same region as the Fellowship. All right, that one will not be able to be used. The next card is Dread and Despair. Play if the total Nazgul leadership is 1 or more. And that will not be able to be played. We have no Nazgul in the battle. The next card is Foul Stench. Play if the total Nazgul leadership is 1 or more. That will not qualify. Next card is Relentless Assault. Before the combat roll, you may inflict and apply up to 2 hits against your units. Add 1 to all dice on your combat roll for each hit you inflict. They are going to play that card. So the Relentless Assault will be in play for the Shadow player. Now we're going to determine our leadership values. The Free Peoples have 1 leader, so they're going to have 1 leader reroll. But unfortunately, the Shadow player has none, so he will get no rerolls. Now he's going to determine, before we roll our combat dice, how many units he's going to remove before the beginning of the battle to gain +1 to all dice on the combat roll. And I think he's going to eliminate 2 of those units. It's going to give him a +2 to all combat dice. Now during this first round of combat, as the Gondorians are in a city, they're going to gain that bonus of the opponents will only hit them on a result of 6. The Gondorian forces will hit on a 5 or 6. So each side is going to be rolling a total of 5 combat dice. The Gondorians will have 1 leader reroll. All right, and here's the roll. Now the Shadow player is going to gain +2 to all their dice because of the Relentless Assault. The Gondorians will gain +1 to their dice. They're going to hit on a 5 or better. The Southrons will hit only on a 6. Here's the roll. All right, there is our roll. We're going to add +2 to all of the Shadow player forces, and that's going to give them a total of 2 hits. It'll convert that into 2 6s. The Free Peoples will also garner 2 hits. And they're going to get a reroll, though, of 1 die. So we're going to have them reroll their 1 die. This is the leader reroll. They rolled a 2, that's a miss. So each side has done 2 hits to each of their opponents. So to resolve this, the Gondorians will lose 2 regulars, and the shadow player will also lose 2 regulars. Well, as the shadow player has a nearly infinite amount of personnel at his disposal, he's going to continue the attack. The free peoples have the option to either retreat or they can continue the battle. This time the city defenses will no longer apply, so each side is going to be hitting on a 5 or 6. I think the Gondorians will kind of stick it out. So they are going to continue the battle. Each side is still going to have a total of 5 combat dice. And then we're going to decide on our combat cards, and the free peoples are going to play the card Sudden Strike. Play if a free people's leader or companion is in the battle. Before the combat roll, roll an additional attack using a number of dice equal to your leadership to a maximum of 5 and apply the result immediately. All right, now we're going to make a roll to determine if the shadow player is going to play a combat card. There's a total of 4 cards in his hand, 4 standard cards. So on any roll less than a 4, he'll be attempting to play one of those cards. Here's the roll. The roll is a 3, so he will attempt to play the cards. I've checked the 4 combat cards, and none of them would be allowed to be played. Either the fellowship has to be present, or there has to be Nazgul leadership present, so they will not be able to play a combat card. Even though they rolled it, there are none that are viable to play, so we're going to resolve the battle. All right, we'll determine our leadership values, and we know the Gondorians are going to have 1 leader reroll. That's also the strength of this Sudden Strike card. Before the combat roll, roll an additional attack using the number of dice equal to their leadership, in this case 1 die, and they're going to do a hit on a 5 or 6 before the battle starts. Here's the roll. And unfortunately, it's a roll as a 2, so there will be no effect for that. The card is played. And now we're going to roll the combat dice. Each side has a total of 5 combat strength. And we'll be rolling 5 dice for each side. Each side will hit on a 5 or 6. And here's the roll. All right. The Gondorians have a total of 1 hit, and the shadow player has a total of 2 hits. So we're going to take, the Gondorians are going to take 2. Well, actually, there's going to be a reroll. They have 1 reroll, so we'll be rerolling 1 of the Gondorian die. See if they can get another hit out of this. They did not. So that is the case. 2 to 1. So 2 Gondorian units will be removed. 1 shadow unit is removed. And that's going to end that battle. And we have to decide if we're going to continue or not. The shadow player is going to press the attack. And I think the Gondorians are going to retreat. The Gondorians are able to pick 1 region that's adjacent to their current location that they can retreat to. All of the units must retreat there. And the question is, do we want to retreat to Lossernach or into Lambden, where we would be able to defend Dal Amroth better? That's a tough one. Well, I think at this stage of the game, we're going to have them pull back to Lambden. And the Southrons are going to advance and take Pelargir. They'll move the entire force forward, and that's going to gain them a victory point. Pelargir is a city, and that has 1 victory point stored in that box. So that's going to gain them 1 victory point. And that's going to end the battle. The shadow has earned its first victory point. And that attack is going to move Gondor to the at war box. Free Peoples are out of action dice, so the Shadow player has 2 action dice left, a character action and an event action. We'll have them roll on the gaze table. Here's the roll. The roll is a 2, and that is going to target Angmar or Rune. Well, we have no leadership available in Rune or in Angmar, so we cannot use our character die to move an army. We cannot reinforce. I don't have a muster die. So I think what we'll do is they're going to play an event die to play the card the Black Captain commands. Play if the Witch King is in play, and he is. You may either recruit 2 Nazgul in the region containing the Witch King, or move any or all of the Nazgul. Then you may move or attack with the army containing the Witch King. Well, we're going to use that card to recruit 2 Nazgul in the space of the Witch King, and then eventually try to move them to either Angmar or Rune, I guess, as military commanders. That was the only play that I really had with the dice we had left. We had no ability to move any armies. None of them were commanded by leaders, and I had really no event cards that I could play. So this was the best that we could do with that instruction. And the Shadow player is up again. The Free Peoples have no action dice left. They have 1 die left, so we will be using that to any effect we wish. We will not be consulting Soren's gaze table. They're going to play a character die. And we're going to use that die to move Nazgul. And we've got these Nazgul here that are available near the Witch King. We're going to move one of those to Pelargir to command that army. And I think another Nazgul is going to move to Rune and take command of that army. This way we'll have at least some character actions available to some of these more peripheral areas. And that is going to bring the turn to a close for the action phase. We'll move on to phase 6. That's our victory point check phase, and we find out that the Shadow player has scored his first victory point, so he's winning 1-0, but he needs to get that up to 10 to win a military victory. So we're going to move on with a new round. We'll start with our recover dice and event card rolls. Now, Gandalf is dead, so the Nara die is no longer. That's going to be back into the box. That won't come out anymore. So the Free Peoples are going to gain a total of 4 regular dice plus Galadriel's special die. Shadow player is going to earn a total of, I believe they have 9 dice now. Three, 6, 9. They have 9 action dice plus a faction die, so there's definite disparity in action dice. Now we'll move on to our event draws. Free Peoples have drawn the File of Galadriel, Rangers of the North, and in long, swift lines. Once again, the Free Peoples will be over their hand limit of the faction cards, so they're going to have to discard one of those. And I think once again we're going to keep the cards that we have, and we're going to discard this new one in long, swift lines. Shadow player will draw his cards. He has a total of 5 standard cards now. And unfortunately, he's going to have a total of 5 faction cards. So we'll have to get rid of one of the faction cards. The Shadow player has decided to discard Ships of Great Drought. Phase 2 is the Fellowship phase, and we have Strider Dunedain is the guide. Fellowship is currently in Parth Celebrant. And we've split off 3 characters. They're currently in Fanghorn Forest. So we're going to see if maybe we can get the Ents into play as we continue to kind of press forward with the Fellowship. They still have quite a ways to go yet. Phase 3, the Hunt allocation, and we'll make a roll on the Hunt allocation table. Here's the roll. roll is at 10, and that's going to place 2 action dice into the hunt box. Free People's player will go on to phase 4, the action roll, and they have their 4 action dice plus Galadriel's special die. Here's the roll. And they rolled a Will of the West, muster army, 2 character dice, and a muster die. All right. The shadow player will be rolling 7 action dice along with a faction die. Here's their roll. And they have rolled 3 event dice, 2 muster, a muster army, a character die, and a recruit faction on the faction dice. The Free People's player are up first, and they're definitely going to be playing this muster army die as an army die. Moria is currently completely undefended. The shadow player had no way of reinforcing that with the dice that they had left at the end of the last turn. So we're going to use the first of those army movements. We get 2 of them. The first one will be to move this force of elves and capture Moria. That's going to give the Free Peoples a total of 2 victory points, moving them up in the lead 2-1 now. We're going to mark Moria as a captured location. We'll place a Free People's token in that region. Now they have 1 army activation remaining. And I think for the second movement, we're going to move this regular in Helm's Deep to the Fords of Isen. We know Saruman is active and he could strike at any time, so we'll try to take best advantage of that fortification we have there. And that's going to complete the shadow player's action. It's now the shadow player's turn, and he'll make a roll on Sauron's gaze table. Here's the roll. The result is a 3, and that's going to be Rune or Angmar. Shadow player is going to play a character die, and they're going to activate an army for attack. And we're going to have this force in East Rune attack the dwarves in the Iron Hills. We'll begin the battle by declaring combat cards. Free Peoples are going to play the card Scouts. Before the combat roll, retreat your army to an adjacent free region or withdraw into a siege. All right, now we're going to determine whether or not the shadow player is going to play a combat card. He has a total of 5 standard cards, so on a roll of 4 or less, he will play a card. Here's the roll. Roll is a 1, so he's going to play a card. We'll get all the cards together, shuffle them, and reveal them one at a time till we have a viable card. First card is Cruel as Death. Play if the total Nazgul leadership is 2 or more. That will not be able to be valid. We only have 1 Nazgul. The next card is 1 for the Dark Lord. Play if the defending army is in the same region as the Fellowship. Again, that is not valid. Next card, Dread and Despair. Play if the total Nazgul leadership is 1 or more. Before the combat roll, forfeit 1 or more points of Nazgul leadership. During this combat roll, the Free People's player rolls 1 combat die less to a minimum of 1 for every point you have chosen. Well, that would be a valid card, but since we only have a leadership value of 1, that would not relate to anything, as the defenders would still have to roll 1 die. Try the next card. They Are Terrible. Play if the total Nazgul leadership is 1 or more. That is correct. Subtract 1 from your total Nazgul leadership to add 1 to your leader rerolls. Well, if we subtract 1, we won't have any leader rerolls, so that one is not valid. Our last card is Relentless Assault. Before the combat roll, you may inflict and apply up to 2 hits against your units. Add 1 to all dice on your combat roll for each hit you have inflicted. Okay, we'll compare the initiative numbers of the cards, and that means that the Scouts card is going to play first, and the Free Peoples will be able to withdraw before the attack. He's going to retreat into Erebor, and these forces will advance into the Iron Hills. And that burned that card for nothing, which would be kind of realistic because if you were playing head-to-head, you wouldn't know what that person's combat card is. So this kind of works pretty well that way. All right, so that'll conclude the battle. Now that attack on the dwarves is going to activate them, and then they're going to move down the track, one for the attack and one for the capture of that dwarven province, the Iron Hills. That is a town. And a town, city, or fortress moves down the track an additional point. So they're one step away from at war. Now we're back to the Free Peoples player. And I think they're going to play an event card. They are going to use their Will of the West die. They're going to play that as an army die, and they're going to play the card Rangers of the North. Choose a shadow army inside or in a region bordering the North Nation. Well, they're going to select the region next door to Dale, which is now the Iron Hills, that's occupied by the Easterlings. And the card continues, roll 3 dice and score 1 hit against this army for each result of 5+. Then recruit 1 North unit, regular or elite, and 1 North leader in any one free region of the North Nation adjacent to the attacked region. All right, so we're going to roll 3 dice, and we'll see what the result is. On a 5 or greater, they're going to inflict a hit. And they rolled 1 success, so they're going to inflict a hit on that Easterling army. And I think we'll take a casualty of a regular. That'll go back into the force pool. And then it says recruit 1 North unit, regular or elite, and 1 North leader in any one free region of the North Nation adjacent to the attacked region. Well, they're going to recruit those in Dale, and I think they'll recruit a leader and an elite in Dale. All right, the North Nation, whoops, I'm using the wrong ones. That's Gondorian. I have to use these. Leader and an elite. All right, we'll move on to the shadow player, and he's going to make a roll on the gaze table. Now, incidentally, with the capture of Moria, the Free Peoples are only 2 victory points away from an automatic victory. If they can capture and somehow capture another fortress, that could be real trouble. So, all right, here is the roll. Shadow's roll is a 7, and that's going to be Mordor. And the target is going to be, the objective will be Minas Tirith. All right. And I think it's time. The shadow player is going to use a muster army die. And he's going to declare an attack from Osgiliath into Minas Tirith. The Free Peoples player are going to retreat into a siege. So we're going to place these forces on the Minas Tirith siege box, and the shadow army is going to move in to Minas Tirith. Now, I'm not going to leave an army behind in this case. We are protecting Minas Morgul with 1 in South Filion, and we're going to mark that the fortress has not been conquered, and we'll put a fellowship marker there to let us know that that is under a siege. All right. And next up is the Free Peoples player. I think he's going to play a character die, and we're going to advance the fellowship. So we'll move the Fellowship Progress marker up 1. That will advance it up to 1. And then the Shadow player will conduct his hunt. There are 2 dice in the hunt box. That'll entitle him to 2d6. And if he can roll a 6, that'll be a successful hunt. Here's the roll. He rolls a 4 and a 5. That's a failure. So we're going to place that character die into the hunt box. That will modify any future hunt rolls. And that will conclude that action for the Free Peoples. Next up is the Shadow player. We'll make a roll on Soren's gaze table. The roll is an 8, and that's going to be Umbar and Harad. All right. Shadow player is going to play a event die. They're going to play the faction event, A Great Fleet. Recruit 1 Corsair figure in Umbar, or add it to the starting setup. Then, if the Corsairs are in play, move all Corsairs up to 4 regions. All right, we're going to place an additional Corsair in Umbar. And then we're able to move them up to 4 regions. All right, the Shadow player has a little surprise coming for the Free Peoples. They're going to move 2 of the Corsairs into Pelargir. And 2 more are going to be moved into Lambden. And what we have the potential to do is these Corsairs can transport units. And we could do a Inchon-like attack on Dal Amroth. So we'll see what happens with that, but that's going to add a lot of stress to the Free Peoples. All right. And I think the Free Peoples are going to use this muster die, and we're going to do some recruiting. And I think Gondor is going to recruit 2 regular units. We're going to place 1 in Dal Amroth and 1 in Lambden. Lambden is a town, so we can recruit there. All right. Shadow player is up next. He has 5 action dice to use. Here's his roll on the table. Roll is a 4, and that's going to be Moria, Dal Guldur. Shadow player is going to play a recruit faction die, and we're going to bring in the Brood of Shelob. Starting setup, we place 1 in Dol Guldur and 1 in Minas Morgul. So the spiders are on the board. All right. The Free Peoples player is up next. They have a character die that they can use. That's their last die. The Free Peoples are going to pass at this time, and the Shadow player will take his next action. Rolls a 9, and that's going to be Isengard. And Isengard is going to play an event die, and they're going to play the card, the Palantir of Orthanc. Play on the table if Saruman is in play. When the Palantir of Orthanc is in play, after you use an event die result to play an event card, immediately draw another card from either one of your decks. The Free Peoples player can force the Palantir of Orthanc to be discarded by either using a Will of the West action die result or using any action die and 1 elven ring. You must discard this card if Saruman is eliminated. Okay, that card is going to remain in play. Free Peoples player is up again. They still have 1 character die remaining, and I think they're going to pass. The Shadow player still has 3 dice left. And here's the roll. Roll is a 10, and that's going to be Mordor. All right, the Shadow player is going to use an event die. And they're going to play the faction event, Children of Ungoliant. Play if the fellowship is not in a region containing a free people's settlement. Move all spiders up to 2 regions. Then you may discard 1 spider figure in the region with the fellowship to inflict 1 point of hunt damage, following the rules for successful hunt. If the fellowship is hidden, the free people's player may choose to reveal it to prevent this damage. All right, we're going to move our spiders now 2 spaces. So we've got one in Minas Morgul. He's going to move to Osgiliath. And then there's another spider in the Dal Guldur region. And we're going to move the spider from Dal Guldur 2 regions to the space with the fellowship. And what we're going to do then is we will discard that spider and we'll inflict 1 point of damage on the fellowship. Now they can reveal themselves if they choose to prevent the damage, but I think they're going to just take the damage and remain hidden. So the corruption level goes up to 3. All right, I almost forgot, the Palantir of Orthanc is in play. It allows us, when we use an event die to play a event, we can draw one from either of the decks. And I think the shadow player is going to draw a strategy card. So we'll add a strategy card to his hand. Free People's player is up next, and they have a character die. And I think we're going to risk it. We'll attempt to move the fellowship. We'll move up the fellowship progress marker up to 2, and then the shadow player will conduct his hunt. There's 2 dice in the box, and there's also 1 character die previously, so they'll be adding 1 to the results. And they will also receive 1 reroll because the Chief of the Ring Wraiths is in their location. Here is the roll. Result is a 5 that's modified to a 6, so that will be a success, and he's going to use his reroll of that other die, and that's also a 6, so they have 2 successes. They're going to draw 1 hunt tile, and the tile is revealed to be 1 hunt damage. All right, well, the fellowship is going to remain hidden at least, which is good. And I think rather than take a casualty, we will simply use the ring, and that will move up the corruption level up to 4. All right. That exhausts all of the dice for the free peoples. The shadow player has 2 muster die remaining, and here's their roll. They roll an 8, and that's going to be Umbar and Harad. The shadow is going to play a muster die. They're going to play the event card, Great Winged Creatures. Play if all the shadow nations are at war. Recruit a Nazgul in each shadow army containing at least 1 Nazgul, excluding the Witch King. All right. And they're going to recruit 1 in Pelargir that had an existing Nazgul. And I think another one is going to be recruited in the 2nd army. And that is in Lorien, so we'll add that to the 2nd army. There'll be 2 Nazgul there. All right. And the shadow player is up next, and their last die is a muster die. And they're going to use that for a special action on Saruman's card. And that reads, the voice of Saruman. As long as Orthanc is under your control and not under siege, you may use a muster action die to recruit 1 regular Isengard unit in every Isengard settlement, or to replace 2 regular Isengard units in Orthanc with 2 elite units. Well, we're going to take the first option, and we're going to place 3 regular units. 1 in Orthanc, 1 in South Dunland, and 1 in North Dunland. And that's going to complete Phase 5. Phase 6 is our victory check, and we have 2 points for the Free Peoples and 1 point for the Shadow. So if the Free Peoples can somehow gain 2 more, they will have an instant win. All right. And I think we're going to close the video here. Thank you for joining me at the Solo Gamers Club with our solo playthrough of War of the Ring. I hope to see you back at the channel soon, and have a good day. Goodbye.